Hi, my name is Jeff. Today we're going to talk about two lists and their relationship with one another as we use them as the core data sources for an application within Power Apps. This is a relation between these two lists. Now there's lots of ways to build relationships between lists, but this is probably one of the easier ways to do it. And I think you're going to find it, it's a little complicated. I'm going to try to walk you through all of the details, and then we're going to show you a real world application that's actually using it. So stay tuned. We're going to jump right to it. Alrighty, so let's go ahead and get started here. Let's just give a quick overview real quick of the information that's being captured here. So the way I work personally, now this may or may not work for you, but it works for me, is that, I really kind of subscribe to the Stephen Covey approach of 7 habits of highly effective people. And I kind of subscribe to that big rock, little rock type of concept that he has of setting priorities, which you see here located on the red side of the screen, with specific tasks related to those priorities. So I like to group things in, as you can see here, personal, different companies that I help out on occasion, all of that type of stuff, okay? Church, my Lush advisors, for example, and when you click on one of those, you can see the related tasks related to them, and then notes related to them as well. Or you can just go over on the right side here in the blue and see, okay, so what is due today? And this is really kind of starts it out, tells me what the start date is, the follow-up date, what order it is, so I can prioritize my time quickly. And then this is how much time I'm estimating is going to be needed. Then when I change the time, I can then go ahead and save it on the fly, and then it adjusts my list, and then I can go in and take a look and add data and things of that nature. So works great. And then this middle section, this is for notes. So if you go in here, for example, back to Lush Advisors, notice here you have tasks and you have notes. All of it, all in one place. And here is the trick, right here, the trick. The trick is search all. So now I'm allowed to go through, because I have it all within the same system, the notes, the tasks, everything. I can search for key phrases throughout the entire structure that is made up of 2 different lists, and I can search for anything that I want. I can go into invoicing. I can do pretty much anything I want, and all of this being fed into a list. Now, are lists the best place for this type of data? I don't know. They seem to work pretty well, but you have to archive them and have some sort of maintenance because there's some limitations with the lists and sort by columns, and there's other limitations within Power Apps. So you just have to kind of build that in. We're not going to talk about that today, but we're going to talk about these relationships between these two lists. So this list here is the priority list. So this is listing, if you go back to the main menu here, this is listing everything in the red. Those are all the priorities. Those are some big things that I'm working on, right? As Steve Covey would say, the big rocks. Then, so that's this right here. And you can see how that information is stored here. Right here. And it's just the customer, basically, the priority name, and a little bit of information about that. Then each task, now notice here, for example, house, ID 1, house is priority name 1. So if I look here under house, I can see house there, there's a 1. So what happens when you create the task is it creates a relationship to these tasks, so that when I go into here, for example, and I say, I just want to look at things related to the house, boom, I can see all the tasks that are needed right here, and I can see the notes that are needed. If I want, for example, to just look for tasks related to the house, I'm going to do a search. I got to hook up Jackson's trip and fix the chainsaw. So all of these things are easily found within the system. I can do that for search all as well. And everything that I've worked on, I can go ahead and look. I can look through archive tasks. I can do all types of things just because I have all the data in these lists. So how do these relationships work? Now this is where it gets a little complicated. So I want to show this. I have this in PowerPoint so you can kind of see this is a different version of that app that I just showed you, but it's all pretty much the same. What I'm doing here, and this is where it becomes important to understand, that's why I have it in PowerPoint. I can show it to you in the code itself, but I think it's easier to kind of grasp a hold of this concept inside of the PowerPoint presentation. So, and by the way, this video is just talking about the relationships of how to build these relationships, how to build all these screens and stuff. You'll have to see other videos on. But let's talk about these relationships. So here, inside of this action, notice here that there's an action button right there. I've got those, the arrows there indicate action. Now, when I click on that item, I'm going to set a variable called var record. And why is this important? Because when I open up the form right here, I'm going to set the default item to var record. So what does this mean? This means that this item, right, that's coming from here, the data, I've made a selection here in the first list, So I've made this selection right here, priority manager. I've made that, I'm selecting from here. I've made that selection and it's going to a form that uses this as its item. I'm going to show you this in the application, but it's important that you kind of grasp a hold of this concept. Notice here notice that I'm using var record and I'm using var task item. Okay, so you have var record this item, and so that's going to show this item are the property values for the first record, right? So here, when I hit add priority, I'm doing the same thing. Var record, I'm just adding it as blank and I'm creating a new form. But when I click on this, I'm editing and then I'm thrown into this form right here. Now, it's everything above active tasks, okay? Right here. This is all var record data. And so it's pulling that data from that record. Now, what does that mean, var record data? Well, the record here that we're looking at, the table, or list, excuse me, is this list, the priority manager list. So let's look at that in Power Apps real quick and kind of pull it together. Here, if I click, whoops, let's take this out of using mode here. If I click on this arrow right here, notice that it says I'm setting up that var record and then I'm resetting this form and I'm going over to here. So I'm resetting a form, I'm editing a form, and then I'm navigating, okay? So I'm setting up the variable here. So as soon as I select here, var record equals whatever this item is, okay? So it's going to capture wherever that is. And in this case, if we look at this table, so let's go ahead and look at that table here. We're going to just search for our galleries. Another reason to name things, because it makes it easier to find things, by the way. Here, priority manager. Notice here where I'm searching in. Now, I'm using sort by columns. So this is non-delegable. So see my other videos on this, but in this case it's okay because my data source stays very tight and small. But here I'm searching. This is where I'm searching. This is the data source, priority manager. So when I say inside of here, when I say this item, that means I'm pulling this item is from priority manager, which is here. So I'm able to access these fields. That's it. Let me put this in a list so you can see it maybe a little bit easier. So when I say this item, remember, I'm pulling right here, var record, this item. That means that that item is right here. Okay, it's going to pull from any one of these data fields. It's not going to pull from the data fields in this list, which are different. Okay, now we have some duplicate right here, priority record ID and related ID. This is data, I'm going to show you how it transfers from this list. Okay, so we plug it back in so that we build the relationship between the two lists, right? They're pointing at each other. Okay, so we've got that. we're going over, and then we're saying, hey, go over to this form and go over. And you saw the form as it edits, and we're going to go over there in just a minute. In fact, we'll just go over there now. So when we click on this, we're going to click on it. Now we're inside of this form. If we take the focus off here, let's see where we're at. Okay, so now we're inside the form. So let's go ahead and search for our forms. This one's the Priority Manager form, which you see it's selected right in blue. And so what does that mean? So notice here that the data source continues to be Priority Manager. We knew that, right? Because that's where we're getting our data. The var item over here, the var record, is telling us that this is where this data is coming from. And so it shouldn't be a surprise to us that when we put it in there, that's where the data is coming from. When we look at the list, it's Priority Manager. Everything's coming from there. And if we look and drill into this here, into this item specifically, we will be able to see, that data is, well, it's coming from the parent default because we haven't changed anything. So I'll show you another example. There's one in here on another screen. Oh, right here. So here, notice here, we're pulling from var record priority name. Now, is priority name a field? It is a field. It's right there. So we're pulling that. We're pulling the variable var record, which we established right here when we hit set. And we're pulling that, notice here, var record priority name, right there, okay? Hopefully you're tracking so far. So this form is pulling from there as well. So we have to say, okay, I'm using var record. I need to then use this form. So let's go ahead and pull up that form again, Priority Manager, and where is that data coming from? If we go to item, we can see, look, it's pulling its data from var record. Now, why are we pulling data from var record? We're pulling data from var record because we're capturing this data right here in the red. That's what we're capturing. Remember, we're capturing it from this table right here, which is our Priority Manager. So we're capturing all that data from that table, okay? So we're capturing it from here, and we're displaying it here within this form. And because of that, we have to set the item to go to this variable. And so you can see here, it says SIRS AccuVise. All of the data is from that record, from that var record. Okay? If we had something else here, we wouldn't see this data. Has to be this way. Just like here, we're getting var record priority name because we're pulling that data as one of the columns inside of that list. Okay, now I've spent a little bit of time on this and I want to move kind of to, we're going to shift just a little bit. So far you should be able to create yourself just a sample list here. You're going to create two lists and you can see my lists. Here's one, so pause the video. Here's the way this list is set up. This is called Priority Manager. And then here, this is Priority Tasks. And I'll go to List Settings so you can see the columns that are set up there. Okay? So set up these two lists so that you have them. You can set them up exactly like mine or not, whatever you need to do. But we're going to take information from one, the Priority Manager, and we're going to dump it into this other. So let's see where that dump occurs within Power Apps. So when we look at Power Apps itself, the form is pulling up data. Great. No problems there. Okay? And we're getting all the data in there. No issue. But let's look at this Add Task, and then we'll dig a little deeper. Now notice Add Task here is just a simple add task, and we're going to go to this form. Okay? Now, when we look at this gallery here, right here, tasks, that's archive task, gal tasks. No, those are notes, gal task list. Okay. So here, our gal task list, we're saying, okay, we're going to go ahead and filter this based on, and this is where var record ID equals priority tasks record ID. So let's look down here. So priority tasks has a different ID than is inside of this list. So let's look here. Priority manager is priority name, which is also, there's a column in here which you don't see called ID. When we look at priority, what was the field again? Priority record ID inside of priority tasks. You go down here, right here, priority record ID. So what it's saying is, I'm going to look at that number. Let me show you where that ID number is real quick here. We go back here to priority manager. And you're going to see this ID number. So it's unique for each one of these priorities. And it's saying inside of the code, it's saying, hey, look at priority tasks. If the record number that I have is there, then we're going to go ahead, and it's not archived and it's not a note. It's going to show up as an active task here for us. Okay? So that's just, again, we're using the variable var record. Let's go in, and I apologize, this is not the easiest thing to explain, but let's go ahead and take a look at another record. Hopefully you're tracking here. Let's take a look at this record. Notice here that this record is var task item. So why is this record different? Remember, we had var record before, but this is var task item. So let's go ahead and go back to this form, and we're going to click on this guy here. Okay, he's going to go and notice here, right here, that we're setting var task item to this item. Now, where are we working now? We're working inside of priority tasks. So when we go back over to that other screen where we're editing, and we're just going to go main menu here, and we'll go back to one where there's a couple examples for us. Going to click on there. Now notice here that this screen has us filling in this information. It's from Lush Advisors, add task to the flow. Okay. And notice here down at the bottom, related ID and priority record ID. Now, where did I get that information? If you drill into that information, notice it's pulling it from var record dot priority name. Okay? It's pulling that information from a different location than this, which is pulling from the parent default. Now, we could change that to say, we could change this to say var task, whatever it is. I just forgot. Var task item, but we're not going to. We could say var task item dot note, and it would go to the same place. But we're just going to take the default, which is there. But here you can see clearly that it's going to var record, and we're pulling that data back. Why? Because when we submit, we want this data automatically be fed from var records variable, because that's where we drilled from, right? We picked up var record. When you look at this, we picked up var record here, and we populated it with this name. And as we moved into here, and we clicked on here, we created a new variable, but this variable we never wiped out, var record, so it's still there. So when we go into here, it's going to auto-populate for us. And when we hit submit here, and we submit this form as a whole, you can see the whole form, it's going to submit it in to priority tasks, and it's going to write that data in there for us. Okay? So if we look at this one, for example, that's kind of how that works. Now, if you look at the default data source, it's coming from priority tasks. Priority tasks. It is not coming from priority manager, which we had before. All right. I know I've rambled on for 19 minutes trying to explain this. I hope that I've gotten through. Let me summarize where we're at. Okay. So here, remember, we have a table, we have a gallery here. And this gallery, when we click on this, it's going to set a variable called var record. And that var record is going to contain this information from our first list called priority manager. When we move from here, we click on this arrow, we move over to here, that information that we collected inside of this variable is going to automatically populate into this form. And then we can add additional information as we see that we need to do. We can also put this information in other places. So we can fill out the first page, which is priority details. Then when we drill in to get more information, we're going to go to a different form to fill this in. But the more important thing is we're going to establish a new variable called task item. When we go over to that report, which is right here, we can still pull data from the two different data sources. So if you notice here, this is a task details screen. var record, we're still pulling that priority name, the same one that we established here. And the task name we're pulling because we established that variable here. Now, why didn't they overwrite? Because they're two different variable names. So we're able to keep them in memory until the next time var record changes when we click on another one of these arrows. So we're able to keep that through the entire program. Now, notice here we have var record, var task item. So two different variables, but pulling the data from two different lists. Remember, this list is a priority manager list. This is the priority task list. Okay? And then, again, what do we do for this form? Which I don't know if I still have that form up. Yes, I do. The items, we're in priority tasks. Again, answer this question. Where's the item coming from? You're right. It's coming from var task item, which is the variable that we use to get to here. Now, we also illustrated at the bottom of the screen here how we have the task list, which is the related ID, and the priority record. And usually I hide those on the screen, but you don't have to hide those. They can just stay out there if it doesn't bother you. But then you'll know kind of where that link is. So, I get it. That's a lot. So, hopefully you can go back. I'll try to bookmark this at key spots so you can easily reference it. But this is how you create a relationship between two lists. I know it sounds complicated. I get it. But hopefully you could do a screen print of this screen here and keep this screen as a reference guide. And it kind of walks you through where the variable is from the gallery and into the form, and then into the second form here, coming from here to here. So how those kind of all fit together hopefully will help you as you build out these relational, these relationships between the lists in your environment. Hey, this works for me. This is a great app that I've built that really helps keep me organized. I hope it works for you. Good luck.